Good morning, everyone. Today for social studies, we are going to focus on the next part of our Section 6 notes on history of your country. In Britannica again is going to be a great website for you today. You want to go ahead and go to your country and along your content site over here, I scrolled all the way down to history. Now, this section, the history portion, is going to take a little bit more time because you're going to have to skim through and look for um, a couple significant events. So here is the history requirements. You are going to pick two major events that happened in your country's history. You want to pick things that are significant, that really molded the country, and influenced its path in history. So what you're going to find in the history section along the side is a lot of a summary or a synopsis of events that happened. So it's going to be really important for you that you look at all those events and you think through what is important about this? How did this affect the country? And what makes it stand out? Okay, one thing I want you to be very careful of is your two historical events. These are not summaries of the history of your country. It's specific things that happened in your country, specific things that happened and how they affected it. So one thing I'm going to do because of this recording, and you're not able to see my handwritten notes, I'm going to type up some notes over here on this screen. So I'll go back and forth a little bit, okay? So as I was reading through the history of Denmark, there were a lot of things that stood out. And as I went through, one of the most important things, or one of the things that I thought was interesting that stood out, was the Napoleonic Wars. And so I'm jumping to that section because I've already done my research and background and skimming through. So I'm jumping right to that just for time's sake. So I chose the Napoleonic Wars and their aftermath as my first event. So I'm going to type that here, Napoleonic Wars. And so that's what I'm focusing on for this section. So what I did was I read through the Napoleonic Wars. I read through the whole section first. And then what I had to do, and this is something you've been practicing all year, then what I had to do is synthesize and pull out the important information. Okay, so remember, you've got to take this information and translate it into your own words. So one of the most important things we need to pull out is when this happened. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to write down, okay, is that it happened in the 19th century. Okay, so in my notes, I'm going to type out occurred in the early 19th century. Okay, so as I keep going, whoops, sorry about that. As I keep going, one of the things I learned was that because of the Napoleonic Wars, a couple important things happened. It ended an era of peace between, helps if I capitalize, Denmark and Norway. And during this time, Denmark had an armed neutrality treaty or policy. Okay, so you kind of have to think of it in both terms. That finally failed. Okay, so it's not enough just to type that out. If you don't know what that means, you need to type some notes in that explain, well, what is an armed neutrality treaty? So one of the things that was a big part of Denmark's history was they were considered a neutral country. They refused to choose sides. They wanted to stay out of wars. So that's something that I would maybe put in my notes, okay? So it ended a time of peace between Denmark and Norway, and they were not able to keep their side of the Treaty of Neutrality. And as I continued to read through, there was a lot in here about Britain coming in. And one of the things that I found in my research was that the British Navy actually attacked, I can type, Denmark and destroyed most of their fleet, their naval fleet. Okay, so that's a big deal. That's something that really caused issues. Now, one thing I'm going to go back because I missed putting this note in. Along with this treaty, I'm also going to put in, okay, so their treaty failed, their neutrality treaty failed. So what did that mean for them once they failed? Well, it meant that they were able to stay out of wars until 1807. Okay, so they were able to stay out of the wars until 1807. Once about 1807 hit, they didn't have a choice anymore based on what was happening. Okay, so not only when you pick your event do you want to look at, okay, what was the event itself, but you also want to look and make sure that you discuss what the outcome was. So as I read through this, one of the things that happened was that some of the alliances that Denmark had were then taken down or separated. And then one of the big issues that Denmark had was that the wars affected their trade big time. Like it cut off their trade with other countries. And then also in 1813, because of these wars, they formally declared bankruptcy. And that was a big deal because their economic system relied on trade. And because the wars affected their trade and they could no longer trade with their allies, it affected their economy and caused the entire country to declare bankruptcy. So just a couple wrapping up notes. So you're going to choose two. I just went through one historical event with you. You're going to choose two today. And these do need to be these notes do need to be completed today because tomorrow we are going to do our last section of notes for this section 6. So just a couple of wrapping up notes. You need to have the name of the event. You need to know when it occurred and give some important information about what that was. So what were the Napoleonic Wars? And then the outcomes of that event. So how did that event affect the country itself, okay? As always, if you have questions as you are researching, you can message me and I will try and help you through those. Other than that, I will see you later today in language arts. Bye, guys.